This has been one of the most fun projects I've worked on. I've worked on a lot of fun projects, but this has been really great. It touches my childhood, like a lot of my shows have. My interest in science fiction comes from the Apollo program. I watched Neil Armstrong land on the moon when I was 5 years old, and my parents got us in the living room. That sparked an interest in anything in space, and I found Lost in Space, and then Star Trek, which changed my life, and science fiction in general. So to go all the way back and start doing things with the Apollo program, the astronauts, and those events, it's just been a kick. It's been a really, really fun show.
So, for me, I've always been kind of fascinated with space, and Ron and I have talked a lot about how astronauts used to be rock stars and everyone looked up to them, and how that's kind of not been the case in recent history. Like, kids do not grow up dreaming of being astronauts and going into space. They want to be actors and rock stars and all these other things, and how we wanted to recapture that moment and show that they were like the big people on the planet, and how going to space was still something exciting and we were exploring, and certainly that's something Ron did with Battlestar and Star Trek, but we wanted to show it in a more realistic way and show what that would look like if we reached beyond the moon and the program kept going.
Obviously, I cannot to ask about the way you're gonna show the Ferrari competition between Russians and Americans when it comes to space.
Well, season one, it's mostly from the American point of view, and we're kind of playing it that the Soviet program went much bigger than it did in history. Our butterfly moment, the moment of history that really changes for us, happens before the show even starts. The chief designer of the Soviet space program, Sergei Korolev, had really guided everything in the Soviet program from Sputnik to Gagarin and into the 60s. And in history, he actually died in a botched surgical operation in Moscow in, I think, 1966. And after that, the Soviet program to get to the moon faltered and never really made it. Our premise is that off-camera, it's not even mentioned in the show, but off-camera, Korolev lived. He did not die at the table. And as a result, he was able to solve the technological problems with the N-1 rocket, which was their moon rocket, and he kept the Soviet program together in a way that allowed them to beat the United States to the moon. And once that happens, everything then changes in the world, because now the United States is behind again, and the Soviets get a huge amount of prestige. Now they've put the first man on the moon, and it changes geopolitics. It allows the Soviet Union to sort of carry the mantle of we are the future, the United States is the past, and it sort of changes that whole era of the 60s, 70s, and into the 80s. The Cold War and how that all played out. So it's really an interesting we don't play a lot of that on camera season one. Season two, we will probably see a little bit more of the Soviet program, but it's definitely the catalyst to everything that happens.
You have a lot of people working on the show, obviously. So do you run into a lot of situations where there's too many chefs in the kitchen? And if so, how do you kind of resolve those problems?
Actually, we were just talking about this the other day, because every once in a while we have a lot of technical advisors, and we have astronaut Garrett Wiesman, who's been amazing, but sometimes we do get conflicting information, and it's trying to figure out whose do we take, or who makes the story more interesting, or because it's all coming from a different perspective. But we've had so many consultants on the show, just for the art department, our writers room, obviously, art department, and costumes. So it's been amazing.
Yeah.
You have to just kind of sort through it. Like, ultimately, you got to make a call. We're going to go with this instead of that.
In real, somebody said, oh, okay, I didn't say if I interrupted. In real life, obviously, and you brought this up, that after we landed on the moon, kind of the space program fell apart. The fact that we get there second, how does that change things? In other words, that people don't lose interest in space as quickly as they did, really?
Well, what we play is basically the Russians beat us to the moon at the last minute. Like, you thought that Apollo 11 was going to be it, and then a couple of weeks ahead of time, the Russians did it. And it's a shock. It's like a Pearl Harbor shock to the country. And then there's anger and outrage and pushback, and it changes the political situation. Now the Nixon administration says, well, wait a minute, whoa. Don't worry, we're not going to be second in this race. We're going to put a moon base up there. And it sparks the race to keep going, because the United States in this version administration never had that pinnacle moment of putting a man on the moon for the first time, which is what kind of effectively ended the moon race the first time. So I believe that if that had happened, the United States would have been angered, they would have come together, they would have said, this is crazy, we were so close, I can't believe we're getting beat again, and then they go all in on the space program. Nixon pulls out of Vietnam early, dedicates more resources to the space program. There's a big push to invest in R&D, research and development of aerospace technology across the board, which starts moving you into things like solar power earlier, electric vehicles and batteries earlier, and you start seeing social change. I mean, it just really sparks a lot of different things because our premise is that the American people are challenged and angered, and that determination that we can't keep losing to the Russians propels them to keep the race going.
All right.
It's like the voice of God.